Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
That's new.
And I did get this
Oh.
meeting is being recorded. Continue
I did
or
too.
leave
That's the,
meeting.
that's the first time
Oh.
I've gotten that.
Must
Okay,
be a new
so that
thing.
must, yeah, well, they must have updated Zoom. I'll have to,
All right. Well, now we're all in.
well, welcome everyone to today's Lunch Bunch on Digital Use and Equity. I'm Mary Magnuson from the Blandin Foundation, but this is really Anne's show. Anne is one of our consultants, so take it away, Anne.
Yeah. Well, I will. I don't know. It's kind of a free for all today. But it's sort of by design and sort of by accident. A month ago, I was like, we should just have a free day where we all talk. And then a topic came up, and then a topic melted away, and a topic came up. And so we're back to my original plan of let's just check in and see how everybody's doing. But yes, Mary says I'm Ann Tracy. I'm a longtime consultant for the Blandin Foundation on broadband for, I think I've been working on the Blandin on Broadband blog since 2007. That seems like an awful long time, but I think that's about as long as we've been doing it. So that's good. So really the thought is to maybe just we always go through and do a fairly substantial introduction, but give an introduction to folks and talk about if you have any questions, if you have any answers, if you have any updates that you want, or any topics that you want to make sure that we cover either today or even in the future, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I talk about some of the stuff that I've been reading, but the truth of the matter is all in the, if I have a half a thought, I put it on the Blandin blog. So it's all right there, the Blandin on Broadband blog. So, obviously lately it's been a lot of the emergency broadband benefit, a lot of Minnesota legislative stuff, the kind of in a limbo with the Minnesota legislature because the budget spreadsheets are all due on Friday. So we're a little bit limbo there, but yeah, maybe we'll just kind of go around and kind of call on folks Brady Bunch style, so that we're not all wondering who's next. But Laura, you're next contestant on my screen.
Hi, good morning. I'm Laura from Arvig. We are a provider here in the state of Minnesota with phone internet services. So just work on a lot of grant programs or try to help out communities. So that's why I'm here today.
I drove by a lot of your signs on my way up to the Canadian border and back this weekend. It's kind of fun to see. Are you working on any project that you want to tell us a little bit about, or?
Just kind of, everybody's gearing up for their ARPA money. So trying to identify the projects and just was waiting for, the legislator to get done to see what's going to be delegated for border to border grant funds. So just kind of seeing which areas of some of these areas around the state, what's going to be a good fit for some of them. So yeah, just working on the costs and figuring all that stuff out. So lots of work.
Well, and it sounds like the legislators kind of landed on 70 million over the next 2 years over the biennium for broadband, but it seems unclear whether that's going to be coming out of the state budget or out of the federal CARES funding. So we're all kind of waiting to hear a little bit on that. So hurry up and wait, isn't it? Scott, you're the next on my.
Sure. I'm Scott Cole. My day job is Collectivity, a worker cooperative that we just celebrated our 7th birthday a couple of weeks ago. And we do support work for a number of nonprofits around our region. And one of our projects currently is supporting Connected Minnesota, the public-private partnership that formed early last year in the midst of pandemic and social uprising to focus on connectivity and devices for students and families around the state of Minnesota. And since that time, the partnership has raised and distributed about $5 million across the state to 53 different grantees, most of them nonprofit organizations, but we've found some funds going into the tribal communities as well as a couple of the Mettons that are situated around the state. And we're particularly interested in what might be necessary to get that last mile connection in places that are the most difficult to cover, to reach those unserved families or underserved families that have proven difficult to get to. So looking at hybrid solutions with a combination of fiber and fixed wireless, and would be very interested in thoughts and comments and feedback experience around that.
Nice. The broadband task force just had a panel from fixed wireless providers this last week.
Steve mentioned that to me yesterday when I had a call with Steve Georgie from Rams.
Yeah, yeah. I could send you a link to the archive if you want it.
Well, the short version from Steve was most of them were talking about applications in the ag country, southern Minnesota, where everything's flat and no
Yep.
trees. And they said, good luck with high density forests up in the northern part of the country.
I think that's a good summary. I think that's a good summary. You guys have a conference coming up this summer too, don't you?
Yes, that is correct. We're organizing a roundtable on July 21st, the morning thereof. And it's primarily oriented around action groups. 2 of the 4 action groups that have been defined are an extension of the last funding round, where we had a chunk of money that was intended to be distributed by community-led groups, both in Black-owned groups and Indigenous-owned groups. So those will be 2 core sessions, and then the fixed wireless action group will be a third, and then the final group is around digital navigation, digital inclusion, digital equity. So the intention is to have a number of key partners from places around the state, like the RDCs and the MIFs and METNs and others who are related to existing projects that are happening or have an interest in any of those 4 areas.
Nice.
More info to come, and I'm happy to take questions about that event during our call today.
Yeah.
One thing more I'll add about that, Anne, is that we are intentionally partnering with Blandin to collaborate and coordinate with the regional sessions that Blandin is planning leading up to the October conference annual summit that Blandin is having, so that we're trying to kind of bring folks together who might also be interested in those regional events as well as the annual Blandin Summit.
Right. Right, and we're still working on some of that. Mary, I'm deciding if we have anything we want to say more about the conference or not at this point.
Well, you can save the date for the actual conference. It's going to be virtual October 12th through 14th from 9 to noon approximately. But that's all we have to share so far, plus the regional convenings that Scott mentioned.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll get out our first invitation to that.
Yeah. Oh, and I've got from Ashley, is there a timeline for the event for the summer, the summer event? Is that, did you say July 21st?
Yeah, July 21st is 8:30 to noon, and we'll start out with kind of some context setting, background setting, and then break into small groups for a short period of time just to get people level set, and then come back to the large group for a few more minutes of share out, and then we'll go into the action groups, which will be the bulk of the time that we spend that day. So about an hour and a half or an hour 45 minutes where people can really roll up their shirt sleeves and get down to work in any of those 4 action groups. And then we'll have one final share out to kind of wrap up the morning. And hopefully some of those action groups will carry on that work between the end of that day and the sessions that happen in September for the Blandin regional conferences.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see that progress. Be good. Good. Michelle?
Thanks. Michelle Moratsky with the Mid-Minnesota Development Commission. You know, we, as a regional development organization, we are definitely in the hurry up and wait mode. We have no guidance yet from federal EDA, what we're allowed to do, what's coming, you know, down the pipe, anything. You know, apparently they're writing NOFOs like crazy. Yeah, notice of financial opportunity.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know what that stands for,
Right.
for funding opportunity. So yeah, we're just waiting. I am very active and working very hard right now with the Candy Ojai County Broadband Committee. We have 4 townships and we are working with Federated Telephone out of Chicago to get those 4 townships taken care of. In 2 of those townships, we have RDOF territory.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's fun.
Okay.
So we are working through that. Yeah, we're kind of working through that and working on, some bonding options and, getting the financing through. The county has a work session coming up to determine where to put their ARPA money. And we're hoping, for me, from the RDO perspective, I have to look at it from a big picture, but, definitely advocating for them to use that since broadband is an allowed expense to use it for. So yeah, just staying the course and trying to get broadband. I am curious. My sister lives over by Dalton, if anyone is in that area, and mentioned that Park Region is coming through and boring fiber. So I didn't see that they got a border to border grant, but maybe I'm just missing something because it sounds like residents aren't paying anything. So just curious about that. For my sister, she thinks it's all this fancy new stuff. And I'm like, yep. Yep, they're boring. I believe that. They're probably not going to dig and, but so I was just curious about the funding of that project, if anyone had any insight. But if not, that's all right.
Well, I'd be really interested in, when everybody's introductions are done, hearing a little bit more about the take on how the initial rules were interpreted relative to the ARPA money that's specific to each state, because it sounded as though there was a lot of openness on the part of the feds to let states determine which buckets money might fall into. So out of the larger amount that every state gets, it wasn't an absolute that money was necessarily going to fall into a broadband bucket unless the state made decisions to do so. So I'm anxious to follow that thread after we've finished our introductions.
I am writing that so that I don't forget. Yeah, I would. And even looking at the room here, I think we all know what RDOF is, so I won't. But if anybody, you can send me a note. But yeah, looking at everybody, I think some more acutely and more painfully than others aware of what the RDOF is, the federal money that came.
There's a related question to that too, and that maybe we can tag on to the one I just threw out there, and that is, in that same initial rulemaking, it appeared to offer guidance that gave flexibility around communities using their own discretion to enter into RDOF areas to do other projects. Yes. And I thought that was really encouraging. It was not nearly as restrictive as folks had thought it might be initially. And so in places where we thought we might try a fixed wireless installation where there's RDOF boundaries, we're going to push forward on the pilot project that we're pursuing so that we can get every family covered based on that guidance.
Yeah, Scott, I don't want to hijack, but just to bounce off of that, we were looking at the Broadband USA announcement and the NTIA through the Commerce Department. And I had read too that, there's some kind of ambiguous language. Like it says, it doesn't say you can't go into an RDOF area and you can't use the funds for that, but they would encourage you to work with the RDOF provider for that area.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you saw too?
Yeah, and I read it twice.
Yeah, I kept going back.
50 pages of it. But I would love us to keep doing our introduction so we don't hijack the conversation.
Well, yeah, let's definitely get back to that because there was a lot in a lot of the care stuff. There's a lot of encouraging and not a lot of definite. So I think that's Becky.
Oh, thanks. I had a question. I'm so glad that he's on here to ask this question because he mentioned you mentioned wireless. So last night, getting ready for Pine County's meeting tomorrow, I listened to Brent Olson, the commissioner of Big Stone County, and Vince from Lincoln County, and Andrea from Fish Lake Township. And they all were pretty committed to fiber. I mean, all of their projects were fiber to the home. Now that was done before some of the new things about wireless. And so I wondered if you could just speak to that a little bit about the changes. And I'll just say that I live in a very wooded area, in a very rural area. So I'm probably, my area, not me, but I mean, my whole area is probably somewhat challenging anyway.
Happy to come back to that, Becky.
Thanks.
Maybe we'll do a few more of the introductions, and people have shifted a little bit. Teresa, now you're the next contestant on the Brady Bunch board.
Oh my gosh, exciting. I saw there was a lunch, so I had to come, but no, my name is Teresa Kittredge, and I run an organization called 100 Rural Women, and I look at Becky and I'm like, oh my God, we got to follow up and get together. But so we are an organization that is all about creating connections and inspiring leadership with rural women. And I have a big interest in broadband and connectivity from a variety of directions. And top of mind today is, gosh, was Ari at that meeting testifying? It's like I still get my darn internet over the phone line, which is just like, it's a killer. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I'm just excited to learn more. I'm really curious about the funding. A couple things with 100 Rural Women, and I'll put them in the chat, but we are going to be doing meetings across the state this summer with rural women, just identifying what opportunities are, barriers to leadership, trying to get more women in leadership decision-making roles. So that's sort of the crux of who we are. And I live right by Mary, so I'm only about 30 miles north of Grand Rapids. I live in Marcel, so glad to be here.
I'll come to your meeting and talk about what an old lady can contribute.
That's right. Us old ladies got to stick together, Becky. So I have quite a cadre of young women this year. Oh, go ahead.
I'm the old lady. No, I'm the old lady, not you.
I don't know about that. I have 8 interns this summer and 2 graduate students. So we've got a lot of young women to balance us old women out. So it's good. So yeah.
Yeah. And you have a monthly breakfast.
I do. How could I forget? So we have a webinar coming up June 2nd at 8:30 in the morning, and I'll throw that in the chat. And what that's going to be is I wanted to do these 100 meetings across the state to really sort of our market research of what do rural women need? Where can we add value as an organization? What are those networks out there that we should be connecting and replicating? So we did a pilot project up in the northwestern part of the state with the support from the regional sustainable development partnerships in the Northwest, and their support was really graduate student, which was amazing. And I'm just going to be sharing our research and findings of what we learned in those 4 pilots. But as Ann said, every month we have a webinar, and it's lifting up women doing amazing things in rural. So yeah, I'll put that in the chat. Thanks, Ann.
Yeah, you always get a good group for that, an interesting group. So that's great. Becky, you're next up for introduction, according to my screen.
Didn't I already did sort of, are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so I own a business up here in Northern Pine County. It's called Namaji, and we do maximization of finding finding revenue for patients whom hospitals are serving. So it's a win-win. We dig deep into the data, and it's a big win for hospitals, and it's a big win for the patients who didn't know they had coverage. So, and then we do denial management too. And so I've got 67 employees up here, and Scott Savage is helping us because he finally got permission to go under the railroad tracks to give us a better broadband. So anyway, that's it.
Congrats, that permission to go under the railroad tracks, that's a biggie.
It really, really is.
So good, it's good. That's a good sign. Beth?
Hi, thanks for letting me crash your party today. My name is Beth Gruber. I'm with the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures, currently working through the Accelerate program with Blandon. I'm leading up the Mille Lacs Tribal Economy cohort. And what we define as the tribal economy is 6 census tracts that encompass our tribal communities. So around Mille Lacs Lake, up near McGregor in the Big Sandy area, and then also over in Pine County and over in Pine County out towards Lake Lena. Hey, Becky, how are you? We have just been loving our time with Blandon and have been learning so much. And today I'm just here to really listen and observe and gather as much information as I can. Most of our projects will be working with our partner counties like Pine County and Aiken County and Mille Lacs County as we look to work on projects. As a tribe, we do have that added benefit of being able to tap into pots of money that other groups might not be able to. But we are definitely looking for partnerships. Currently, we have a partnership with Pine County on a project submitted as part of the congressional spending, or the old term is earmark, I guess. Congressman Stauber came out and visited in Sandstone a couple of weeks ago and talked about the project that was submitted to bring fiber to the home from the city of Hinckley all the way out to the Wisconsin border. So if that were to be awarded, it's super exciting. There are some RDOF plots within that area. So we would have to see if Scott Savage from SCI didn't win that bid to do the work, how we would make that happen. But we're just really excited to be finally serious about this. I wish we would have been serious about it a year ago. I feel we have been more ready to apply for things.
Yeah.
But we work feverishly at the 11th hour to try to get applications in when we need to.
That's great. I used to do a lot of grant writing. It's always the 11th hour. It doesn't matter how prepared you are. It's always there's always something in the 11th hour. Well, we'll keep an eye on how that's going from Hinckley to the border. That'd be fantastic. That'd be a lot of ground covered. Congrats. Brian?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for letting me join today and for everybody joining as well. So I've been on a few of these calls, just soaking things in. I am the IT business analyst at Blue Earth County. And what we're doing is just trying to get a feel for what's coming down the road for funding. We have a lot of providers in our area that come to us and just ask us how much money they can get. But, you know, as the county, we just don't have anything budgeted for broadband. So, you know, we've helped with some of the border-to-border grants for vendors applying for those. A while back, it's been probably 3 years now, we got a Blandon grant to do a feasibility study. So a lot of the vendors are still using that. And matter of fact, we've had a couple of providers approach us last couple of weeks in anticipation of ARP money coming in. So they've given us the details of some of their projects, which is very helpful because we hadn't seen anything like that prior to the possibility of being able to provide some money for them through the ARP. So we've got some very detailed plans from some of the providers that we are presenting to our board. And just to give them a little background and prepare them a little bit, what we learned from the first round of the CARES Act, there were several counties that funded some of the projects, broadband projects then, and we had some of the providers approach us at the last minute asking about that. And it was kind of too late because the money had to be spent before the end of the year. So what we want to do this time is just get a jump start on any possible funding that might be filtered through the county that we can put towards some of these projects that we've been presented with. And unfortunately, we talked to some of those providers and say, well, if this doesn't come through and you don't get funding from the county, will you apply for border to border or get funding somewhere else? And they're like, probably not. So a lot of it's hinging on filtering through the county. So we're waiting on, the legislature and from the federal government on what we can spend the American Rescue Plan Act funding on. So once that comes, maybe we can start getting into some further negotiations with some of the local providers. And we've gone as far as getting grant applications ready. We've got some templates that came from the Broadband Coalition. And so we're getting those ready, just anticipating that we might have some money that providers can apply for through the county for some of those projects.
I hadn't really thought about how that funding that became available, really almost this time last year in that short window would kind of be a dress rehearsal for people getting ready this year.
Yes. Yep. And that's what we learned. We saw a lot of a lot of counties that had news stories that they put money towards broadband, but a lot of those were projects that were already underway. And they just put more money to get them done quicker for local counties around this area. But we didn't have anybody approach us to say, we're in the middle of this project. We could use X amount of money just to finish up this last leg. It was more of, we want to start a new project. What money can we get from you? So that's kind of what we're preparing for this next go around.
Okay, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a building blue plan, or blueprint a little bit. So that's good.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's nice, coupled with the feasibility study, I would think.
Yes. Yep. That was very helpful. So
Good. All right, everyone's shifted a little bit, but Anne, you're the next one to do an introduction on, according to my screen.
And me?
Yes.
Hello, I am Ann Bradis. I am in Grand Marais, and I work with a nonprofit called the Minnesota Children's Press, where we write, illustrate, and publish books by children. And in terms of inclusivity, we are really, really making an aggressive push to get more and more Native American children, particularly from Grand Portage, which is really just 30 miles from Grand Marais. Now, they have their own charter school up through 5th grade, Ashkiyogimog, and then they go into the District 166. So the networks are tenuous, and as in all things, relationship-based. So I'm spending a lot of time just showing up and networking and trying to build relationships. So I'm open for suggestions from anyone who's had successes on how to get cross-cultural inclusivity in the digital world.
Awesome. Well, we may have some people with some ideas.
Good. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Now or later, either way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's a hard time to build it. It's a hard time and it's a good time because of, just kind of the remnants of the pandemic.
Yes.
It's hard to just show up places. or know, it's harder to know where to show up online.
True, true. You know what, actually, sort of a good venue, I started taking online Zoom classes in Ojibwe language. And I'd always been interested in it, but there were just more offered this year because so many people are taking Zoom classes. In our last session, we had 150 people, many of them Canadian, who are actually, and sort of government people who really wanted cultural insights and like, why aren't things going well? Am I using the wrong words, the wrong greeting, the whatever? So I'm feeling good about that and trying to find more experiences. I've joined an Ojibwe language, one of those sort of coffee sessions where you're supposed to practice your super duper beginning Ojibwe, which I'm actually sub beginning. I re-enrolled in beginning Ojibwe. So that's my one strategy and I like it, but I'm open for all ideas because that really is a goal of Minnesota Children's Press.
I was just going to share real quick the project I've been working on. We are over here in Wilmer. I'm working with Ridgewater College, and we will be doing a course for multilingual journalism.
Nice.
Yes. So our targets are folks that are, non-traditional students. We want to schedule this so it works for them. Hybrid course that they can bring news and information to their population in their first language orally.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
It's super exciting. So it was born out of just a brief conversation, and I just kind of slapped it against the wall, and Ridgewater's been fantastic. So
wow, good for you.
More on that, but that's putting those on Facebook pages or websites or however, maybe it's videos for companies. So
That's excellent. How can I follow your progress? Where is?
I'll drop my email
Please do. That's
in
excellent.
the chat, and it's good.
Nice. Thank you. That's really, really creative and excellent. I appreciate it.
Yeah, please do let us know how that goes. That'd be. I used to be very involved with some of the online newspapers in the Twin Cities, so I'd be very interested in learning more.
That's cool.
People
idea.
shift and they can't see where I'm. Awesome, thanks. All right, and I am going to apologize because Kamer, I mispronounce your name every time, and I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's totally fine. It's a hard name. My name is Drakmer Debak. First, I wanted to thank you guys for all the work you're doing. Sorry I was eating. But thank you guys for all the work you do. It's amazing to just hear everything that everybody's doing in this group. We're a part of Get Connected Minnesota, so I'm with Awesome Inspires, and I got hired because of a grant that we got from Get Connected Minnesota. So I'm the digital navigator here, which it's pretty fun. Right now we're working on getting broadband and getting more people connected to internet in Austin, because we found that that's one major thing that held a lot of kids back, a lot of families back during the COVID year. We ran out of hotspots at the high school. They were handing out hotspots and we ran out of them. So we have a group put together that's working on that. So that's why I've been here often, just listening in and seeing what is going on in Minnesota. It's been really interesting and I've learned a lot. So thank you guys.
Nice. But at least the hotspots are working for your students through the whole district?
Yep. We've had some issues with them because some of them aren't connecting to the towers as well. So there's some issues in that, but we've tried to figure out other ways to help students get connected to the internet. So,
like what? I know that there's some school districts, kind of Pine County around there, that have had some difficulty because a lot of students can't get connected.
Yeah. One thing that we've done is try to utilize Spectrum and the program that they have. So it's been difficult though. It's been difficult with it because we're really not used to it. So it took a lot of time, but utilizing that, and then just our library has been very helpful as well in helping kids out.
Nice. Nice,
Yeah.
good, good. Well, we're always happy to have you and never apologize for eating lunch.
Thank you.
Ashley? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm Ashley Schweitzer from Hennepin County. I'm not sure if my video is on or not, but
It is now.
okay, great. I had a delay. So I know that Hennepin County has a sort of a different challenge than a lot of the rest of you, but we do have some really rural areas of the county. And then in some of our suburban and urban low-income communities, we've got a lot of individuals who are underconnected or have other challenges with their digital skills. So we are just having ongoing conversations around what does the future of digital inclusion look like for Hennepin County? What kind of commitment do we potentially want to make to our residents to close those gaps so that everyone has access to what they need to fully participate? We did some programs that were CARES funded, focusing really on device distribution. That was the guidance we got internally. And we're looking at the ARP funds to see what we might fund, what we might not fund, things like that. But they're interesting conversations to have because I think the pandemic was really eye-opening for folks in the Twin Cities about how many of their friends, neighbors, family members, and certainly the people we serve were really disconnected now that libraries were closed. The number of devices and hotspots that libraries and schools in the metro gave out, I think would be really eye-popping to people a few years ago. So I'm here to listen, and I particularly wanted to hear about some of the emergency broadband benefit programs. If anyone's doing that, I've been tracking that a little bit. We've shared that information with staff in some libraries, and we are creating some materials as well to share that out, but I'm not sure what folks are hearing. Nationally, I've heard through the NDIA listserv some different reports of what's working, what's not, some upselling, things like that. So I'm curious what folks are hearing in Minnesota. I think that's all that I have for now.
All right, Jen may have an answer, she may not. I don't want to put her on the spot, but what I'll do is have maybe Jen have you introduce yourself, and if you don't, we'll kind of bump into the emergency broadband benefit discussion right away, because I know that's been a hot one too.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm going to answer that this way. I mean, we're getting our information too from NTIA, all sorts of places. I don't want to get too deep in that, but I can try and share some of the things that we have, that we know about resources on the emergency broadband benefit. I am Jen Frost. I'm a grants administrator for the Border to Border broadband program at the Office of Broadband Development at the state. And I'm always like to attend these so I can hear what the issues are, what's coming and going. I'm also interested actually in how local communities want to use some of their local funds to either get access, which obviously is important, or for those communities that have access, are they using any of those funds for digital inclusion, digital equity? So that's just, it's great to hear, everybody's plans, and that's it for me.
All right, that's good. Yeah, it feels like some of the EBB, the emergency, when you're used to writing everything and not talking, it can get hard. The emergency broadband benefit feels like it's still so much in influx. I think that folks on the NDIA list and folks at NDIA are paying close attention to how the different providers are handling it is certainly helping. Now it seems like there was a push from some providers to get people to upgrade before they were able to take advantage of that. And that would be kind of the household benefits. Is it $50 a month, 75 on a reservation for subsidy for broadband? So I think that'll, I don't know if anybody else has anything more.
Well, it seems like the uptake has been solid. There's almost 2 million individual households who've been granted benefits up to this point in time, and it was launched on the 12th of May. So in a short couple of weeks, they've gotten a number of people signed up, and that's way fewer than what are needed to get signed up. But I'm also curious what the difference is, if anyone knows, between the EBB program and the more recently announced Emergency Connectivity Fund program that's specifically for schools and libraries, and whether or not there's any new information on how that's going to be administered, how it's going to be accessed, et cetera. Because there's another $7 billion in that fund that's supposed to be specifically available to libraries and schools. Anybody know about that one?
Feels like a Ferris Bueller moment. Anybody? Anybody? Unfortunately, we were going to have somebody from the NDA who I think might have had more information on this, but they have a webinar happening just right now. So,
Well, Ashley has her hand raised.
oh, Ashley, please.
Well, I'll know more tomorrow after I meet with Hennepin County Libraries, but my understanding is that the EBB is that direct to consumer benefit where the individual resident or household needs to verify eligibility and then enroll with USAC and then also pick a service plan. Whereas the Emergency Connectivity Fund is using some E-rate funding mechanisms for schools and libraries to provide internet connected devices like computers, and then also potentially connectivity directly to students and patrons who are not able to access services in person. So I don't know if there's going to be any like verification around that, but there is some filtering that might need to be placed on the devices. I think it's a temporary loan for the device. There's some rules around where you can, what I'm trying to say. I think there's some restrictions around what's eligible, but I'll know more tomorrow. But I think it's really sort of more flexibility for the jurisdiction. You have agency to make some decisions and interpret the rules and do like a bulk purchase or a subscription versus the promote this available information to the consumer for them to make a consumer informed choice. I think that's sort of like the tree.
Got it. That's helpful.
That's a good way to have that distinction. Because as a former librarian, you know, we have more time to read the small print on some of this stuff. Oh, it's easier to read the small print when you're getting paid to do it. So I think that'll make a difference. Well, I'll kind of lift up, or even Scott, I'll ask you to lift up your question earlier too, because a lot of people have kind of second and thirded that topic as well about the ARPA and how it's being interpreted by the different states, the funding for broadband by buckets.
Yeah, well, we haven't identified yet whether there's somebody at the state level, and maybe Jennifer, you have some better eyes on this than anybody else would, since you're at the state, about what the perspective is on the interpretation of the initial rules about how the ARP money is going to fall into the state's jurisdiction, and then they have decision making about where it gets dedicated, since there was a lot of flexibility granted, it seemed, and then if we assume that a certain amount of money by the state is put into the broadband budget or bucket, how much flexibility do individual municipalities or townships or counties or anybody receiving the money have to deploy that for the kinds of projects that they want and where they want those projects to go? So specifically, we talked earlier about the RDOF defined areas. Our interpretation was that there was a lot of flexibility and even encouragement to move forward into deploying where need existed. And if that means that an RDOF carrier doesn't plan to deploy for three years, and the need is immediate, that there would be some justification for putting a solution in place, whether that's all fiber, partially fiber, and fixed wireless, or all fixed wireless. That's a long reply to your lead in, Anne, but I hope Jennifer got some of it.
I can tell you, I need a magic 8 ball, ask again.
Yeah,
later
really.
to show you the screen. we don't, I don't, at least, at the state, know what it can answer any of those questions. I can tell you, what I agree with your interpretation to a point that, that there seems to be some flexibility, but we don't know. We're still waiting on funding for our program.
Yeah.
And we don't know the source of that. So, and again, any restrictions that might come. So, we're
Typically
hoping.
land in the finance
Mm.
group in terms of how they decide where that money's, is the revenue department going to figure out where that money gets distributed, or who ends up making those decisions?
My guess is that it's a big across regions, because it could be infrastructure, it could be all sorts of things. So I think there are lots of opinions coming in on analyzing the policy and what the guidance has been. But we're waiting as well.
Yeah.
Kind of waiting. And
So the governor could potentially call a special session just to negotiate how the ARP money gets distributed. If everybody has to be involved.
I don't know that I don't know that would happen, but it could be. I don't know that everybody has to be involved. I just think that they're being real
Prudent.
purposeful in how, that they're getting all the interpretations and making sure they're doing it in a way. We don't want to, I guess, as a state employee, and I would think nobody wants to put out money that it's really hard or difficult to use.
Yeah.
To accomplish what the goals are of the feds in giving us money. So I think there's going to be, real deliberate kind of, let's not make this hard. It needs to go to where it needs to go.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
And that's like me personally. I can't speak for the state, but
Yeah.
but I kind of trust, and we work with some really good people. So.
In some ways, I think back to the ARA funding from, was it 2010? And they came out with some of the first rounds of the funding, and then they redefined broadband 6 months later. So I think they're trying to avoid some of that. They went from broadband being 10.1 to being 25.3 very soon after they awarded a lot of that money, or maybe it was even 4.1, 10.1, so I think that they're trying because I think clearly there's some frustration with this money that's just right out of reach and not quite sure how that's going to come down the pipe for folks. But Brian, you alluded to getting some templates. I think, Brian, it was you who alluded to getting some templates for proposals from was it from the Minnesota Broadband Coalition? From a coalition?
Yes. Oops. Yes, it was actually it's posted out on the Minnesota Broadband, the deed, Minnesota Broadband.
Oh,
the Office of Broadband.
Office of Broadband. Okay.
Yes. They actually posted it out there, and that's where I got it from.
Okay. That's helpful.
I'll find that and just post a link to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can comment, those are examples that other communities use with CARES funds. So there's two were kind of grant programs. The other was a last mile to get those folks that just need to get connected and may have some user charges to help make that happen.
Awesome.
Well, I'm sure you're watching the time, and we have about 3 minutes left.
Yeah. My only question is that funding, and who knows what's going to happen in the next month. It seems like further funding might be a further discussion that really focuses on some of the funding might be beneficial for next month, folks. But otherwise, give folks, Scott, thanks for sending.
Just dropped a link in for a study that just came out that actually got shared to us by one of our colleagues at MDE about a group of school districts, about 13 big school districts and groups around the country that looked more closely at empirical information on what's needed. And the findings in there are pretty fantastic. It shows that we're still way off in terms of what minimum speeds are needed for
Oh.
families.
That phrase just got bumped that right up to the front burner for me then. Good, I'll take
Yeah.
a look at that. And Mary, thank you for posting. The next lunch bunch focused on infrastructure is on June 9th. And then the one for digital use and inclusion will be, I'm gonna say 2 weeks after that.
2 weeks after that, looks like, oh gosh, I'm on October in my little mini
Oh.
calendar. That's not helpful. The 23rd.
The 23rd. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there's 2 minutes if anybody has anything they want to make sure to say. Otherwise, I'm going to thank folks for coming. This has been, it really has been super helpful for me to hear what people are working on and have people answer different questions. I will say I did do 2 seconds of research while I could on Dalton and Park Rapids, but I just really found, Michelle, that you already knew that they had applied for funding, but that's all I could find from here. But that's what I can find online. That's not my ear to the ground. So
Yeah, I couldn't even find like an article that said, hey, we're doing this or anything. It was,
I'll keep an eye out.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm just curious if they found funding under a rock or something that.
And where's that
leprechaun.
rock?
Right.
Are there more
Hand
like
it
that
over.
That's awesome.
Thanks,
Well,
everybody.
thank you all very much, and hopefully we'll see you next month, if not before.
All right. Have a good rest of the week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.